Welcome to the Soul Space. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Kim.
And these true life stories are brought to you to inspire growth, healing, and positive changes.
Enjoy. So, hey everyone, welcome to the Soul Space. So, today we have Sadie and Kate. So, thanks for coming on, ladies.
Welcome.
And we have a mother and daughter special.
Yeah.
So, first mother and daughter we've had on. So, I'm just going to explain a little bit about how the other episodes have gone and what we do. So, the Soul Space, the idea behind it is that we come on and tell our soul stories, really. So, it's any challenges and struggles you've been through. It's up to the person how much they share or don't share. And also, I know it's hard to put your whole spiritual journey in like 5 or 10 minutes or however long. But it's any key bits or what you feel just drawn to talk about today. I think that naturally comes. So we don't plan anything. We just go with the flow, which I think's what you have to do on your spiritual journey anyway. Just hope for the best and hang on. So that's what we're doing. But yeah, it's just a little bit about your story, sort of what's led you to do what you do now, any practices that have helped, how you help others and things like that. And then we'll just see how it goes.
Sounds good.
So we're going to start with you, Kate. So yeah, wherever you want to start, really.
Oh, well,
tricky.
I suppose I should go back to almost the beginning because it's always a good place to start. I suppose for me, it was recognising as I got into my adult years, because I was diagnosed at 17 with anxiety, depression, and for a lot of years, right up until I was about 39, I was on and off medication. Thought that's what my life was going to be like. Because my own mother had been diagnosed with depression. And looking at my mother, I could see that she'd always been on medication, always. And I suppose I naturally thought that was it,
That's normal. Yeah.
But, coincidences, I don't believe in coincidences because, things happen for a reason. And I remember going to a community centre where they'd got this health and wellbeing sort of event going on, and being drawn to an area that were doing Reiki taster sessions. And I met this lovely lady who later became my Reiki master. And I remember at the time, I think I was suffering with really bad migraines and things, and noticed that after, a trial sort of treatment taster session with her, just how different I felt. So I went to her again and we had the discussion about, had I thought about coming off my medication? And the answer was, well, yeah. And again, funny how the universe conspires because, she was the perfect person for me at that time. And I do believe we are drawn to the people that are ultimately going to help us on that journey. Yeah. And Anne happened to be that person for me. Went to the doctors and, again, he asked me the same question. Had I thought about coming off my medication, which I'd never been asked that before. So that, I would say, was the start of my journey.
Yeah.
I did all my Reiki attunements, led me to look into other things as well. So Indian head massage, looked at mindfulness techniques, became a clinical hypnotherapist as well, became part of the Sue Stone Foundation, which gives you the tools to look at your thought and behaviour patterns and how we can change them. And I suppose, since that time, I can honestly say I've never been on any medication since. So from 39 and I'll be 63 in January, and I've never been on medication.
And that's how long ago? That's when your Reiki started. You were 39.
Yeah, and it was a big thing for me. It helped me. I got into the Reiki mainly for me. It wasn't about oh, I can, facilitate healing for other people. It wasn't about the money side of it. It was purely, I know I feel different having a treatment.
Yeah.
And I want to feel different. I no longer want to be that person on medication suffering with, depression and stuff like that. So that was the real start of it. Thinking about my own daily practice, I journal every day. I meditate every day. The importance of getting out in nature as often as I can and going for walks is such a big thing. But, everything that I've learned on my journey, I take into what I do for other people.
Yeah.
As a Reiki master, obviously I attune people to Reiki, which, again, for me is such a privilege. Even just doing the treatments, because I see that I am a conduit for that healing energy. I'm not going to heal anybody.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me, it's about them raising their vibration,
Yeah.
being compatible with that healing energy that I, facilitate. I run a women's only art and craft group because my background is in art and craft. So I use that in a lot of things that I do because I can see the benefit of that. And it was important for me to keep that for women only because of certain things that I had experienced in my own life.
Yeah.
So, I do a lot of workshops. I've given talks. So much that
And the women's group, is that people you invite to come, or is it with a charity, or is this just something, how do people come along?
I run them from the Watch Centre in Hillfields because that area feels the right place to hold it. It's about creating a safe space for women that they can come and they can talk about anything that they want to because it's a safe environment. But the fun aspect is the art and craft and, and we'll put on exhibitions of our work and stuff like that. But that is open to anyone from any area of Coventry and it's run bi-monthly.
Yeah.
So all they would need to do is perhaps message me and come along.
And it's connection for people as well, because the ladies will meet other people there, I suppose.
Yeah, it's really helps with their isolation. I mean, one of the ladies that came to me, she's been coming for a couple of years now, really came and had quite bad health. She'd had a major operation, sort of a year and a half, nearly 2 years on. Her confidence has grown. She's one of my volunteers now, and just helps me run the workshop. So it's amazing to see the changes in people.
Yeah.
As well as I do, because I've been part of Hillz FM for 15 years, I do a lot of the radio training.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the tools that I've learned I use in the workshops, even for the radio training.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask me, one of the biggest things I think that can help when we are feeling a certain way in ourselves is simply what I call an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude. If you're grateful for what you've got in your life, you can't be sad, you can't be unhappy.
No.
It changes. It changes how you feel.
I think everything starts, because I've said this before in another podcast, I look back at where it all started, and I remember I got my gratitude journal.
Yeah.
And I was laughing in my secret book, and me and Sarah were laughing because I said I read that and thought, that's it. I'm going to change the world. My life's going to be amazing. I said I had my gratitude journal and my crystals, and I was like, that's it. I said, and then I was in for a bit of a shock as the journey continued. But it's nice that I think it all needs to start there with that light work there and that lightness and that funness.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be really heavy, and
because it helps bring you back to that when the times when things are heavier, which will come when anyone's ready. Yeah. And like I always say, sometimes people won't be, in their whole journey will be about, reading books like that and gratitude, and that's where it's wherever you want to take it, I think. But yeah, it always makes me laugh. But I said that I do think gratitude's still the one thing that's always stayed in all my practices, even when I've gone, my structure's changed and I've tried new things. I think it has to always come back to your gratitude. And do you find that people are drawn to you who do have similar stories to yourself?
But don't you think that happens naturally,
Yeah.
Kim? You know, I think when I look at my own life experiences, of which there are many, you know, I just think everything has led me to this point now.
Yeah.
I could not run the workshops that I do if I hadn't have experienced that, because I think it's given me gratitude for the fact that I've experienced it and I've come out the other side. But also it makes you less judgmental.
Yes.
You know, I ain't about to judge anybody because I think, you know, we've all got life experience. We've all had certain experiences in life, whether they be good, bad or indifferent, you know. But who are we to judge anybody?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it comes back to what we were talking about briefly before we started as well. It's like you can only lead people to places you've been, and you can only explain what helped you. Like I always say to people, breathwork might not be for you. I can only say what it's helped me with, in the hope that it might help someone else. I can only explain how it helped me, share my experience, and it'll be for some people and it won't be for others. Same with the Reiki, was all personal to me. And I think with me, I had a tricky one with the Reiki as well, because I did my level 1 and again come out of there thinking, that's it, everything's going to change. And through the night, I got a phone call and my best friend had passed away, which, looking back now, for a lot of days afterwards, it was like I was angry at the universe, because I was just like, what sort of sick, you know, it's like, I was like, that just, but you know what, the gratitude come back in. After a couple of weeks, I actually sat there one day and thought, wow, imagine I was going through this, because this was always going to happen anyway. I can't control it. This was going to happen and we're all going to lose people. But I thought, imagine I didn't have my beliefs. Even worse pain I'd be in now, because after a while, when I started going back to my Reiki and treatments, I was getting my messages, my signs. Obviously, with what I believe, I knew she was okay. Would always miss her in this life, and that'll continue forever. But I knew there was a bigger picture. So then I started to sit there and think, imagine I was going through this and I was how I was a few years ago. It would have been a lot more horrendous. But I had people around me, I had the right energies around me, and again that path took me on a path of having to do some deeper work through my grief. But then a lot of people started being drawn, coming to me that had lost friends and family, and having Reiki treatments and using breath work. So again, it was, you're turning that pain into a bit of power and to help others. And I think that's the main thing. Like I say, life's just one big experience, but there's going to be good and bad ones. But it's having the tools as well because I've been through things similar since, but I've not turned to the drink that I did when I lost my mate, because I've got other tools now. And I've got, so it's not that the anxiety never comes again, or the grief, because I think sometimes with anxiety and things, if it's coming, it's coming. And you've got to ride, but it's just knowing different ways now. I would have always tried to run. That was the soonest thing, like, how do I get this pain gone quick?
Kim, that's because we're never taught how to deal with it, are we?
No.
And I don't think Western society is very good at dealing with grief anyway. No. You know, it's
or emotions, full stop sometimes.
And I feel, you know, with what we know that, like you say, the person's never really gone. Their physical body has gone, but you know, and I think that can give you a lot of comfort when you know that person, that energetic side of them is still around you. Yeah,
the role's just changed a little bit in your life now, and I even at first I was always very wanting to feel her energy and all around, but I've even got more understanding around that now, where I realise she comes in at certain points when needed. So there's a certain point in my life I know, oh, this is happening, or this energy's around me because I felt my friend come in. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a little nudge. But again, it's that having that faith, I think, but it's not talked about enough, like you say. And I think emotions full start, what you were saying the other week, from a child, even as parents, you can't help it. But as soon as a baby, as soon as you cry, the first thing someone wants to do is stop you cry. If even when I remember at school, whenever you have your first breakup or heartache, it's get over it. Don't let them see you upset. Don't. So we're always taught that it's not good to sit with your emotions. And
when
I
it's
think
the best thing you
it's
can
the
do,
opposite.
isn't it?
That was like my most like the biggest thing I learned on this journey. And it's so simple and scary at the start as well, when you realise the only way through it is to sit with it. You can't go round and I was like, I even then had realisations that I had always ran. And I was like, oh, I've just got to sit with it. I've just got to, and again, with practices, even sometimes my mentor was like, no, you've just got to slow down, Kim, and sit with it. You can't even always run to a breath work, or it's that looking for answers. And I think that's because at the start of my journey, I think I thought I needed to be fixed. So it was that realisation of we don't actually need to be fixed. Like the old me that used to drink, there was nothing wrong with her. I just didn't have a relationship with myself very good. I didn't have that self-love. I didn't have and I just didn't know any better at the time. But obviously now I know better. But I think I was always looking for answers because I thought there was a problem. So when I realised the only problem was I was just completely shut off to myself. So the first sort of breathwork sessions and Reiki, having this feeling that you've come home, and then you realise the home's just here. And it was literally like I could feel like my soul, like, we've missed you, yes. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that the key was to just slow down and go in. But you don't realise that at the start, do you? But yeah, so Sadie, if we want to go into a little bit of your story, or how did your mum's story maybe link into yours? Or
Yeah, I think it definitely linked in. I think because growing up, like Mum said, she was always on antidepressants, so she was very numb. And please don't take this the wrong way, but as a parent, she was very absent. So I think seeing the changes in Mum, and ultimately, Mum's Reiki master, who then became obviously mine, influenced so much of my spiritual journey, because ultimately I saw the differences in my mum. So Mum did her first attunement first, and then I think I did my first one when I was 21. Became a Reiki master at 28. But again, ultimately, I never went into this for like, oh, I'm going to be a healer. It was always actually about, I need to deal with my own shit. And, because there's so many layers to it as well. And even though, I think looking at Mum's story, and obviously like Nan, they'd always been on medication. The way I medicated myself was through drinking drugs. I just thought that was normal. And it's taken me a long time to realise, and like you say, get into that place where you're comfortable with yourself and you can sit with yourself. And again, when you start on this journey, there's so many different layers to it, isn't there? And there's so many different practices. So yeah, I think ultimately it started with Mum, seeing the changes in her. I mean, our Reiki master, and bless her soul, she's not here now. She was a much older, experienced lady, and just, learning so much from her, And back then, I mean, this was,
2002?
No, it was prior to that. So I'm sure it was prior to that. But anyway, when you met Anne, first of all, I think it was...
Oh, it would have been before then.
Yeah, so I think it was like late 90s. But she was into the sound healing and that kind of thing then. Doing mantras, the chanting, the meditation. But ultimately, she really taught me about having that connection with the divine within, and not to look externally for answers. That thing of sitting with yourself. So yeah, I'd say ultimately she was just the huge catalyst for me wanting to change. And it isn't something that's come overnight, because ultimately I'm 43 now, and I'd say it's only most probably been the last year that I've gone through really quite profound changes. And I think that's ultimately been down to the Kambo. I went to a self-love retreat, which I took myself away to in June. I sat with ayahuasca, San Pedro. I did a mushroom journey. But I couldn't have done that at the start of my spiritual journey, because that would have most probably tipped me over
and overwhelm.
Oh my God, yeah, because you've got to go through a massive period of integration, haven't you? So I feel like this year has most probably been where I've experienced profound changes.
But what do you think made you, because 21 was obviously quite young.
Yeah.
So in that time, obviously it's a massive gap to talk about, but what do you think, what was it now that made you want to sort of get back into it all and start that journey again? Because you haven't, sorry Kate, you haven't drank for over a year now.
It's been a year.
Because I've loved watching, because I met you, I think, at the start of all that. So
Yeah.
I've loved watching your Instagram stories and the whole journey of it and seeing the changes. And when I spoke to you, and I think you'd gone away on that 5-day retreat, I was literally like, I can't wait to see this girl when she gets back, because I thought it's going to be a big change when you come back.
Yeah.
And you, obviously it has been. But what do you think was sort of a bit of a catalyst for coming back to it all? Or what maybe pushed you away from it all?
I mean, I always thought I've been on this spiritual path, but ultimately looking back, had one foot in, one foot out. Because also for me, you know, people on this spiritual path, they looked a certain way, they behaved a certain way. I've always I like living an opulent, decadent life.
Yeah.
I like nice things. And I always thought, ultimately, if I was going to be a spiritual person, I needed to wear hippie pants. And do you know what I mean? Like, it has a certain connotation.
Yeah.
Well, it did for me. And I think back
I think
then as
everyone's
well.
the same.
Yeah, and it was like, actually. And I think also my sense of identity was always in my career, where I lived, the materialistic stuff I had. So I think this spiritual journey I've been on, I've had to shed them layers away. I've had to, you know, shift through that ego, the persona, and really find my true essence.
Yeah.
So I think, that's most probably what it's been. But yeah, geez, I mean, I couldn't have sat with any of the plant medicines that I'd done on the start of my journey, because it would have literally blown my head off.
So for you, it was always like one foot was in and one foot was out. But then the
definitely.
last year, you've jumped in head first.
Yeah, and I think
what you
also-
has to be the right time in there.
It
That's
does.
divine time, and I always trust that. And I think sometimes we need a bit more life experiences before. Because sometimes if you haven't hit that rock bottom or something hasn't happened, then you are sometimes a bit one foot in and one foot out, because you're cruising along and it's
Exactly.
it's
And I
okay.
think, like you say, sometimes when you go through that real period of darkness, that's when the greatest light comes.
Yeah.
And I feel like for this past year, because prior to me going, right, I'm not going to drink, you know, I was in a relationship where I thought, oh my God, I really love this person, and it's great and it's amazing. You know, and actually, it was actually really vile and toxic, but I needed that to make the changes that I have done.
Yeah.
Where possibly before, you know, my life was rainbows and unicorns, and I didn't necessarily need to do all that deep work. So, but again, when you start on this path, life just has a way, or the universe, of putting things in your path. You know, every day it's learning, growing, changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we sat here in a year's time, I'd look back and go, oh God, you know, so much has changed for me again. 'Cause it's just constantly
of course.
growing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it will keep changing. And I think as well, accepting that, and again, having the gratitude that you can look back. Like I recently had to, after a breakup, sit and write loads of gratitude for the relationship when I wasn't in a place to be doing that. And I thought, but no, that's when it's easy to have gratitude every day when we're in a good place, because it's like, everything's great. But the more I started writing it, I was like, wow, I wouldn't have met this person. I wouldn't be in the job now. I wouldn't have even doing the podcast, because I was like, that connection coming there, and you start to see why things happened at the timing. You also start to realise, like, sometimes it's okay that people just come in for a chapter and leave. Like, it's not as deep as we
not
think
everyone
it is.
is meant to be in our lives,
No.
all of our lives, are they?
No, and sometimes you're there to trigger each other a little bit on this
1,000,000%,
path, and false, and that's not just in romantic relationships. I think all
relationship,
friendships, whatever happens. But I think once you accept that is okay, that people are come and leave, and that's all right, and you still have gratitude. And looking back at the lessons, I would always have before just not maybe seen my own wrongdoing in something. Whereas I think every relationship's it's reflection, isn't it? So once you actually look back and go, that was my lesson to learn as well.
But I remember Sadie talking about our Reiki master. I mean, she always said, you know, you take responsibility for yourself, for your own actions in any situation. And I remember at the time sort of thinking, what's she talking about? You know, in certain situations I'd been in relationship that, you know, there was sort of violence and, you know, abuse and stuff like that. And she'd say to me, but you take responsibility for the part that you played in that.
Yeah.
And it was a hard lesson to learn. But we do have to take responsibility for ourselves. And I used to think, you know, what's she going on about?
Yeah.
You know, she's mad. But no, with the knowledge and all the experience I've got now, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because it's about our boundaries. And I had a similar thing to you when someone sort of put it to me and said it. I was like, what? And they were like, but that's your fault. You got, in a way, you got treated this way. And I was going, what? And they went, because you set your value at that. You didn't put your boundaries up.
Yeah.
You've also put another person up on this pedestal, set all these expectations that this person's like you, and they're not, but that isn't actually their fault. So now you're let down because you've built it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And then you stayed and you done this, and then you're like, oh yeah,
It's interesting, isn't it?
you realise your boundaries have come into play. But again, that's a great lesson, because you don't take that forward then. And this is what I always say to people: you'll always keep repeating what you don't learn from. And this is one big life school, isn't it, here, right? And once you accept that, you surrender to it a little bit easier than always thinking someone's done you wrong, or it's really interesting. So I think with what we were saying earlier, when you got back from that self-love retreat and stuff, how did you find the sort of integration and the process? Because you weren't doing Kambo then, was you?
No, I mean, I'd sat with Kambo quite a lot before going to that retreat. I mean, Kambo's very different because it gives you a different level of clarity. Where when you sit with psychoactive substances, it's completely, you know, it can boggle your head, can't it? You know, depending on your experience and where you go. But yeah, after I mean, I was very blessed because it took me a long time to pick where I wanted to go, because there's a lot of people that do these journeys. But for me, it was really important to go to people which had done hardcore dietas, you know, they'd sat with the medicine.
People you trust and feel safe with.
They'd done a lot of training, they'd been in the jungle, you know, they've really, you know, they're at one with this medicine. It's, you know, something that they sit with very often. So I was very blessed, because when I came back, it was a case of they worked with me for 4 months after.
Okay.
So they checked in with me all the time. They were giving me work to do via email, you know, journaling prompts, and a lot of support from them. Because I mean, it's a huge experience, isn't it? So, I was very blessed with the people that I went to.
And then did that just start to come naturally to you, that you would be facilitating it? Or?
Yeah, funny, because I reached out to Lewis, who's my master practitioner. I reached out to him March this year and said I wanted to do my Kambo training. And then I booked on for September. So I did the retreat in June. And then as soon as then obviously had a few months, and then obviously went and did my training. Yeah. And obviously you put through your paces with the training.
Yeah,
you do like a 3x3. So you come round after Kambo, you have more of it. You know, it's like, it's very intense. Yeah, very intense. But again, you know, that all worked out the way it needed to build that relationship with the medicine as well. And my process when I was on my self-love retreat and I sat with ayahuasca, she took me through a process of rebirth, and actually felt like I was giving birth to myself. I know it sounds very strange. To prepare me for my next stage of life. Yeah. So it's all come together perfectly. Yeah.
Have you sat with a Kambo with Sadie?
Well,
oh my.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had you done it before?
Yes.
Yes.
We did our first one together, didn't we?
Did you?
Yeah, we did. I'm like, come on, Mum, come with me. She's like,
So both of your first times?
First time,
okay, that's nice.
And then, of course, once Sadie had done her training, it was like, okay, it's been a long time since I've had Kambo. I want to do it again.
Yeah.
Because I'd got it in my mind after speaking to Sadie that I very much wanted to do the lunar cleanse, which is 3 Kambo treatments within the lunar cycle.
Yeah, I've spoken to you about this.
And I said to Sadie, I don't know that I can go straight into doing the 3, but I'd like to do Kambo again, then maybe leave it a couple of weeks, and that was what we did.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think Kambo, is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. For anyone listening that obviously doesn't know what it is, but what do you like? What's the positive experiences you've had with it, or what do you think it changes so much? If someone was listening, thinking, "Why should I try Kambo?"
If you set, you know, if you feel drawn to Kambo, I think you're going to get a much better. I don't know how to put it. Much better experience if you set intentions.
Yeah.
Well, there's power with intention, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, huge power behind that.
So, you know, Sadie and I discussed it, and although I kept, you know, I keep a journal every day, writing my journal without fail, it was like, right, I'm starting a journal. I think it was after the first Kambo treatment, before I then went into the lunar cleanse. I was keeping a journal and I was setting intentions. The biggest thing for me was the addiction to tobacco.
Okay.
Because I had been a smoker on and off since the age of 15.
Okay.
That was a biggie for me. So I set the intention I want that gone.
Yeah.
The intention of just caring for myself more, eating better. I realised that food I was eating weren't particularly good. It was like, you know, come on, I need to care for myself. I need to have more self-love. But if you know, thinking about, the mental clarity, the way I feel in my body now, it's like, you know, we talk about life experiences being built up around us like layers of an onion.
Yeah.
And we have to peel these layers off. For me, the Kambo, it's like it's just stripped off a whole load of layers, and I'm my authentic self again. I'm this person that I have always been, but life experience and trauma, you know, makes you behave and act sometimes in certain ways.
Yeah.
We self-soothe, we have addictions.
Yeah.
You know, I'm no different from anybody else.
Yeah.
But my goodness, I think if you feel drawn to Kambo, do it.
Yeah.
Because the benefits, Kim, it's very difficult to vocalise
I think
how you feel.
Yeah.
You know, but I feel amazing.
Yeah.
I think Kambo puts a mirror up though, doesn't it? And it shows you your divine essence, and it strips away all these stories that we tell ourselves. You know, we are our trauma, we behave like this for that reason.
Yeah.
And it does take you back to your true essence. And don't get me wrong, it brings stuff up, doesn't it? Because you've gone through a complete process where it's brought a lot of stuff up for mum, but you're able to deal with it. You know, and it's that importance again as well, isn't it, of sometimes welcoming stuff in, because we can go through traumatic things and go, well, that hasn't happened, and we just get on with life.
Yeah.
But actually, subconsciously, we deal with it in a different kind of way, where now consciously stuff will come up and it'll be like, okay, that's fine, you know, put that to bed, nurture it, move on, thank the universe for it.
Yeah, it's a bit like what you said earlier, Kim, you know, with emotion that comes up, you sit with it.
Yeah.
And since doing the Kambo and doing the lunar cleanse, which we started the full moon, we had a treatment after that, a week after that, and then a week after that, which was the new moon, which felt completely right for me, because Pluto was coming out of my sign of Capricorn that had been in my sign for 16 years. So it all felt really, everything just
aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did. And I just feel that when memories come up, things that have never entered my head for years and years, it's like, okay, I recognise it. I thank it for the experience that I've had. I send it love, and I can release it now.
Yeah.
And the Kambo has enabled me to do that.
Yeah. Because I think Kambo as well, I think it gives you a lot of like mental resilience, but it also gives you such empowerment, because once you have sat through it, because I know people, they focus on they see the videos and watch it, or people hear about it, and they're like, and I said, it's so strange. I said, so because when you talk to the tribes, and a lot of them I've met, and obviously they always come back to, you know, you're actually getting well. You're not making yourself sick. Yeah. And they always say the Western world is crazy. you see your stuff that's making you well is actually making you sick.
Yeah.
The tablets you take, what numbs you, and then things like Kambo and stuff, people find that's like, but that's actually teaching us to soothe ourselves and regulate in the right way, not the wrong way. But I think when you do sit through that stuff, though, you have a big sense of like power, because it's like, I've done that.
I've done this.
I've
Yeah.
got through
Feel like
that.
a
I
warrior.
can,
Yeah.
So then that breakup sometimes, or that bit of heartache, or that little fallout you make, you start to realise that's not actually that serious. I've just sat through that for 2 hours. I'm actually powerful. I can sit through an argument or a bit of an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
So for me, it gave loads of like empowerment as well as what I felt at the actual time. And I always say to people, it's everyone's experience will be different, I think.
Yeah.
But I like with Kambo that it does take it out your hands, because even I watch people with breath work and they fight it, and it's natural, our ego fights, stuff's going to come up that you've been used to suppressing. But sometimes a bit with Kambo, it's like once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
So
And
you've
you have
got
to
to sit with it.
Exactly.
You've
Got
got
no
to
choice,
surrender, because
yeah.
you've got no choice.
Yeah.
It's for some people, like I've met certain people and I'm like, you do need a Kambo, because that's the way to go in, then come back to me and do the breath work. I'm like, as soon as I see a fighter, I'm like, have you heard of Kambo? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you need that. But I say to people, it's the feeling, don't focus on the stuff you hear or see. It's the feeling you get after, and nothing compares to going through a slight, your sickness or anything. And even that part, I actually still found that good, because I knew it was getting parasites and rubbish out my body. Because like I say to people, even if you come at Kambo from if you think you're not spiritual or that's not the path, even if you just look at it for what it does for your body, and a
full
detox
cleanse,
and an actual cleanse, even if you're leaving all what else you'll get out of it, even if you come in with that intention, it's incredible. So even as you're being sick, I was actually still always like, thank you, because I knew it was getting stuff.
Well, I did
out.
it for the health benefits as well.
Yeah.
I mean, 5-6 years ago, I found a lump in my breast, which was removed. I didn't want any treatment after that, because I wanted to do things my own way. I was told it was cancer. They removed the lump, But for me, because of course, and I don't understand why they do it, but they remove lymph nodes as well.
Yeah.
And knowing how Kambo works through the lymph nodes, it was like the health benefits as well. I mean, not that because I always believe my body is perfect, it's whole, no matter what has happened, whatever operations and stuff I've had happen to my body's perfect. So, I've never suffered with lymphedema or anything like that, but it was like, I know the health benefits with the Kambo, not just the mental sort of spiritual aspects. So that was another reason for me wanting to do the Kambo as well.
Yeah. And how has it felt for you watching Sadie's journey, especially the last year?
Oh, it's going to make me tearful.
No. That's why I knew I was going to get you. As I thought, right, we've had no tears yet. Time's ticking on.
Oh no, don't.
No.
As soon as she starts, I literally
No,
get
but
like,
that's what you want to see. It's real emotion. And again, this is what we're teaching people. Stuff like this is normal. Get upset.
I am so proud of her. So proud. And I've often said to Sadie, if it wasn't for Sadie doing Kambo, would I have done it? I know we went and we did Kambo together the first time, but Sadie becoming a facilitator and honestly the changes that she's made, and I just think she's not the person that she was even a year ago, 6 months ago. She's constantly becoming. That's the way to put it. She's becoming, and she is, and I just, I'm so proud, because, I suppose we could say Kambo isn't for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
It is warrior medicine. And I know how I felt doing the lunar cleanse. By the time I'd got to the third one, I was like so proud of myself, but at the same time thinking, I'm pleased it's the third one.
Yeah.
So with what Sadie has gone through with the training and everything, and I just think, my God, she is a proper warrior.
Yeah, and now you see her helping others as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. But Sadie is doing it with the right intention.
Yeah,
Right?
because you've used it for your journey.
Yeah, and I think with me as well, what I did want to, for me it was a big thing, saying to Mum, that's it now, we can sit and I can do this with you.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, because I think, ultimately, as a family, there's been a lot of trauma, hasn't there? My mum obviously touched on, domestic violence. So there was a lot of stuff, wasn't there, that needed addressing. And even though, we've both been on a spiritual path for a long time, and there's different modalities and stuff we've used, our bodies hold on to trauma.
Yeah.
And Kambo strips you of that. And for me, it's just been life-changing. So
and to be able to experience that together a bit, getting rid of some old trauma together.
Because it did bring a lot of stuff up for you, didn't it? Because I think once you make that intention to sit with any kind of medicine, the universe starts it's showing you stuff, and stuff you need to work through. And
I think that started even when you were, like, when Sadie was on her training, because I remember that 1 week of the training, and there was emotion coming up for me, there was memories coming up for me, there was certain pains and things in my body, and knowing how the Kambo works,
the ancestral stuff,
the ancestral stuff, and
that's
it was
why you
like,
were getting it.
okay, I recognise what Sadie is doing in her training right
Yeah,
now,
'cause you could feel
and
it.
my body's experiencing things, and people might think, well, that's mad,
No.
but
we're all connected, aren't we, at the end of the day?
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think it's people don't realise, you often hear people saying, oh, addictions ran through my family, this has run through my family, and then that's when you want to, you can't push it on people, but you want to say, well, it will, because these are ancestral, and cycles are real.
Yeah.
And that's why we need people breaking them, and we need to, and people, I always say to people when they come to sessions, and some people might get mum guilt, that they've come maybe away to a retreat and they've got kids, or they pay. And I used to say, the only thing I can say to you is everything you are doing now is going off onto your children.
Yeah.
So what this work you've come away to do, your kids will get more out of that than if you were just sat at home with them tonight. I know it's hard. And I haven't got children, so I always very careful, because people will be a bit like, well, you haven't got kids. So I get it.
Yeah.
But I say, I can promise you this is going off onto your kids. And even like what Sadie said earlier, even without having that realisation, but seeing the changes in your mum. So already you'll feel the change in your mum's energy, like you felt it in Sadie's. You could see changes around people, and that's a massive thing as well, to then encourage them.
But mum guilt is a very interesting thing, because I know, like Sadie said, how I wasn't there as a parent, and we're talking about emotionally, because I was just numb, and that's what some medication does for you. It's like it wraps you in cotton wool, nothing can permeate through it.
Yeah.
They always had, good food to eat, clean clothes, and all the rest of it. But emotionally, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I know that I held on to that guilt for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that's something else that the Kambo and the other stuff that I've done has just helped
you
me
sit
get
with
rid
that.
of. Yeah.
Because this is what I say to people as well. I know some of it can sound scary when we're talking about brings up stuff you got to sit, but what I always say to people isn't bringing up anything that isn't already there. It's always in there. We've just not known how to get it out or sit with it. So that trauma's like, I always show people at the start of my breathwork sessions a video, because I said it's interesting that the only animals, and as humans, we're animals, that don't have a natural trauma response is humans and zoo animals. So it's actually a shame for zoo animals lose it, because they're conditioned off humans. And it shows the picture of the polar bear. It's like a little video. And this polar bear is being caught to be them, not, it's like for tests or something. And when they actually catch the bear, you would think that would be when it would go into trauma. So this scientist found it interesting that when they drop the bear back to its safety, its family, it drops to the floor and has a big fit. So the ones that were filming were like, but why is it doing that now? It's safe, and not when we caught it. And then obviously they looked into it and they were like, because that's just its natural trauma response. And then you see the relief. It takes a big breath in and out, gets up and just walks off. back to his family, fine. And I was like, but can you imagine as humans, all the traumas we've gone through and our body's still carrying all them? Yeah. And I said, and even when we get it out our heads, because I've had stuff come up and I've generally been like, I don't think about that anymore. Like in my head, that's gone. But they're like, but your body takes years later to get it out. So it's still in there. And what I would say to people as well, I know with tablets and self-soothing with alcohol and drugs, it will push it down for a little bit and numb you, but it also numbs all the good stuff because you just don't feel anything, do you? Yeah, so true. I got to a point when I was going out, it would be that instant fix of the pain of my friend had be gone for a little bit, but I wasn't having fun on a night out. I was getting carried home. I was the one everyone was laughing at because I'd started to fall asleep on nights out. So it just wasn't, I couldn't tell you the last time I'd had fun on a night out, whereas now I have loads of fun when we go to stuff. But I was like, so that it wasn't even fun anymore. And then the pain comes back as much, if not worse, because when you're hungover or if you sat up all night and you've been on drugs, your grief's going to go like that even more. And with medication, I think, it numbs you, but it also numbs all the good stuff because you're just not feeling anything, are you? But I think it's scary for people to obviously make that leap. But I think that's why it's important that they hear about things like Kambo and your stories and yours with Reiki, because you have been there, you're on medication till you're 39, and it's proof that you can make a difference.
And I always think him, do you want to stay in that uncomfortable feeling, and self-medicating and whatever way we deal with it, self-soothing? Yeah. Or are you actually going to think, I'm going to do something about it. I might be uncomfortable for a little while, but the long-term effects are going to be phenomenal. And that was what made me do the Kambo.
Yeah, that's a difference. So, isn't it? I think sitting with stuff for a short time, but it actually heals and passes quicker than when you're trying to. Yeah. Like, even my mentor had to remind me a few weeks ago, he's like, Kim, you've got urgency in your voice. You're trying to force letting go of something. You know it don't work like that. It will let go when it's ready to let go. And I was like, I felt more now like, I know how to do breath work and get rid of this, so I can go into a journey and get, and he was like, but you're running, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, you're right, I am. And I was like, but then without trying, like saying naturally, stuff started to let go because that urgency had gone, that I need to get this gone now. I was sitting with it and understanding, feeling where the feeling come from, and that was not just about that person. This is about rejection. You feel it all, but it becomes like what we talked about earlier. You love them being on your own company because you love learning about yourself, and even though it's hard sometimes, then when you get through it that way, you're so empowered for yourself. That's like, I sat with that, and I've figured that out, and now like I'll sit and talk to little Kim and inner Kim, and I'll. Like my mentor said to me, what Kim are we dealing with at the moment? What Kim's battling? And I was like, well, the rejected little girl. And he was like, do you think she appreciates this battle? And I was like, no. He's like, what does she need? I was like, just me and some self-love and some soothing. He's like, it's simple really, isn't it? And I was like, yeah,
it's powerful speaking to your inner child though, isn't it? Very powerful.
I think so. And I think you have to, when you sit with things like Kambo and that, you've got to pull you've got to get your warrior out, and you've got to
put your big girl pants on.
And and it's I think it's just really powerful. And for you, Sadie, back the other way, how have you felt watching your mum's journey and how she's changed?
Yeah, it's been incredible. It really has. And obviously I'm so proud of her as well, because not everybody's drawn to Kambo because they think, oh God, there's a level of discomfort. But I think once you've sat with it once, I love being in the process. The connection I have with the medicine and the spirit of Kambo when I'm in that process, I love it. But that's, I've done a lot of Kambo. But the changes in mum, and I think the biggest thing, stopping the smoking.
So did that attention work? So you did stop?
Yeah, it's literally stopped.
Yeah, after the Kambo treatment,
that's a massive moment.
It was like, no, I don't want one. I don't feel the need, and that has stayed with me.
And that's amazing for you to experience that you got to facilitate your mum and got her to give up smoking. Yeah. No, it's the medicine, but it's still, you've done that. and you've had to sit and hold space.
Yeah.
Like, so it's still incredible to know. And that's so you'd smoked since when?
Since I was 15.
That's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting all the practices you've done over the years as well. And then it was this one that finally got the smoking.
Yeah,
Go
I
on.
mean, don't get me wrong. Over the years, you know, I'd started again. I stopped for 8 years once, and then started again. Why, I don't know, but you know, but this is different this time.
Yeah.
It feels different, and it was all. I think because I always said after the Kambo, it felt like a complete reset for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realised the way that the Kambo works, it was like, but I no longer have that addiction now.
Yeah.
The Kambo will have got rid of that because of the whole process that you
Yeah.
go through. And it's funny with Kambo as well, isn't it? Because, you know, like what Sadie said, I know after doing the lunar cleanse, the 3 treatments within the lunar cycle, if someone had said to me, well, you're going to do Kambo again the following week, I'd have been like, okay then.
Yeah.
So it can't be that bad, Kim, can it?
No,
What you go through, because you actually welcome it.
I'm actually a bit weird about it. I love it. So I'm not. The last time I sat, actually, my friend Susie was moaning because we were halfway. I mean, there could be another time I could sit and it's completely different. So I'm fully aware of that as well. But Susie always laughs because she's a little wonder. She always says, "What wonder?" And she was like, "I look at Kambo," and I'm like, purging.
Oh, really?
But we were laughing because it was just 2 opposites. It was the only 2 of us. And she said, I was there purging. I'm going, and I look up, she says, and this one's playing the drums on the purge bucket because I was right at the flow. And I'm like, and she said, I just looked at her and was like, fuck off. They're tapping you, then just being sick and going back to the drum. And she was like, why don't I look like I'm doing it? And my other friend, she's the same. She has to strip off, always just sports bar. She's like, sorry, I'm hot.
Oh, yeah, I
and then
get
she'll
like
just
that,
sit
yeah.
and breathe through it, and she sort of makes it look. But she commits to it because she's that surrenders. It's the surrendering, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest thing I learned about a lot of my deeper journeys. I always thought, I laugh now, I always said to people, I'm a dead laid back person and I always go with the flow and I surrender really easy. So then when my ego got picked apart, that wasn't the case. And then I realised how much of a battle I did put up. And I was like, wow. And I'd always tell myself, I'm not a controlling person. They sort of like, you're not in relationships, but you are with yourself. So you're trying to control your own path, your own journey, your own. So
Yeah.
I'd sort of got that balance wrong, I think, of, you set your intentions, but I always went into stuff with an outcome. And that's where you can go wrong, I think. So it was always, this is going to do this and it's going to play out this way. And they'd be like, no, it's not. And even the breathwork session, I started to think I could read it, how it was going to go. So then it's like that next layer, they shock you and they're like, no, this ain't happening today. But I do think I realised that a lot of us, I wasn't controlling with other people, but I was with myself. So even my journeys.
Well, we're our worst critics, aren't
Yeah. And we find that easier than giving ourselves love, I think. But that's changed, I think, for me
Yes.
now. But that's why I always wanted to help others. And I realised that was still me distracting from helping ourselves. And I think we do get caught up in that as healers, like say, or you're trying to think you're helping and healing the people, and you're not. We're just sharing experiences and holding a bit of space for people.
But I think boundaries are good as well.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you do have to have boundaries.
Very, very strong ones, I think, sometimes.
Because I think when you're empathetic, you are naturally drawn to help people. And obviously we are, because we wouldn't do what we do. Sometimes we can give too much of ourselves. And then that isn't self-love, is it?
No.
You know? So,
and that's what I was doing. And I think it can also tap into something that's not healthy, because then I realised I was getting a lot of external validation. So it was actually doing me good as well. So I had to check in with, hold on, you know, you're helping people for the right reasons, but then you're also getting caught up in, because they're giving you all the thanks and it's that validation. Again, I realised I need to come inside a bit more and get my own validation, because that's when I couldn't say no to anything. it's like people pleasing. And I think I had a big realisation when me and my mentor spoke once. They were like, people pleasing doesn't actually exist. It's a polite word because we don't want to admit what we're really doing. And he was like, why do you people please, Kim? And I was like, I don't know. I know there's a reason why I do it and it's not healthy. I said, but I don't actually know why I do it. And went into a deep breath work then, and then sort of when I hadn't quite come out of it, so it was sort of like a bit hypnosis. So then he asked me the question again when I was still coming round, so I was off guard. He was like, why do people please, Kim? I said, because I fear rejection. And he was like, there we go. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I'd sent it. And I was like, oh, that's true. And then you sit back and look, and I'm like, yeah. But that helped me, that one simple thing helped me say no to loads of things and putting my boundaries up, which I wouldn't have been able to do before. So what we're going to quickly do, so you always have to pick, it's not very fancy, I need to work on this. I said to everyone I was going to get a nicer, and Sarah, when she's seen this, she went, that bowl's not very goddess. I'm just quickly writing, she's more prepared for things. But we get someone to pick something out, and then that'll be the topic on the next podcast, and then we just sort of finish for the last 10 minutes or so on the last one. So the last one that got picked out for you ladies was relationships. So we'll have a little chat about that, but it can be romantic, relationship with yourself, but it's just some little pearls of wisdom or key points you would like to say on that subject to finish on. And if you just want to pick one, Kate, for the next podcast, which I'm not actually sure. Oh, I do know who it is, actually. It's this for the interest. The last 3 in a row have been relationships. And I was like, why do they keep pulling that out? And they were like, and I went, they know it's because the last thing I want to talk about this year is relationships. And they're shining that mirror on me going, yeah, here you go again. So it'll be heartache, which is a similar one. So heartache. So yeah, just if you think about relationships, so it can be about how you think your relationship with yourself's improved with this journey, or your relationship with others, your relationship with each other. Could be.
I think external relationships are always a true representation of the relationship we have with ourselves. I don't think we will ever have successful relationships with other people until we have a successful relationship with ourselves.
100% my view.
Because everything external is a reflection of what's going on internally.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned that. I mean, I've always had a very sort of up and down relationship with my dad, but now I'm in that place where I accept him for who he is. I'm now having a better relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I think like romantic relationships, I look back at my past romantic relationships and realise ultimately I was the right vibrational match for those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, that's been a massive eye opener.
Yeah.
You know, and actually I'm really grateful for those relationships because they've brought me up to this point now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think again, you know, like my relationship with my mum, I mean, you know, growing up, we've always had a good relationship, but, you know, things weren't great growing up. So, you know, there was always, and I think you have expectations from your parents as well. And I think when you drop expectations and again, you know, you have more of a loving relationship with yourself, that carries out into your external relationships.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I totally agree 100% with what Sadie has said. I mean, I do feel that I feel like I've always been close to Sadie, but I feel we're even more closer now. I really do. Whether that is due to the sort of ancestral healing through the Kambo, that shared experience with the Kambo. You know, there's so many factors, but I do feel, because I suppose if I think about when I grew up, as I was growing up, I really didn't think a lot of myself. In my teenage years, I wouldn't look at anybody. I'd walk with my head down because I really felt I was so ugly that I didn't want people to look at me. And that stems from, you know, again, my mum sort of, oh, you're just like your father, you're this, you're that, you know, which...
Words are powerful though, aren't they? They stick with us.
And, you know, she was always saying that my dad was ugly and he was this and that. So, of course, that then impacted me. But, you know, the relationship with yourself, and I suppose thinking back to when I was growing up, you know, self-love, you were selfish.
Yeah.
You know, that
Or
was
you loved yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that negative
You'd-
feeling
you'd-
attached.
You've got a big ego, you know, but
the
self-love
opposite.
isn't that.
Yeah. It's actually the
It's
opposite of having a big ego.
self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, like Sadie says as well, once you get the relationship with yourself right, other relationships
Yeah.
around you seem so much better.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it starts with ourselves.
yeah.
Every
Got
single
to.
time.
Everything
Yeah.
starts with us, doesn't it?
It's got to, and this is why I think, like what we spoke about today, and I always say to people, like, for me, it doesn't matter what practices you do. Once I said, because spirituality is just it's your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
It's not what you dress like or what you wear, like we spoke about
Yeah.
earlier. Like I had a moment a few weeks ago, and I started giggling to myself in a session. I thought, I don't know why, but I was walking around, I'm hitting my big shamanic drum. And I was in this deep breathwork session. I'm chanting, I could feel stuff being chanted. I looked down, and I was in my Under Armour tracksuit, and it just tickled me. 'Cause I thought, if the ancestors could see me now, they'd probably think, what's she walking around in? I've got this big drum, there's all this music on. I'm like, and I looked round, I thought, Kim, maybe not, maybe turn the tracksuit in a bit, please, guys. But I thought, what's it matter though? It doesn't matter. And I'm not off living in the jungle as much as I'd love to. I don't. My unit's in Stoke Aldermore. Get on with it in your Under Armour tracksuit. But it's like this is where we're meant to be for now and where we've been put.
Yeah.
So but I think, for me, it's exactly the same as you ladies. I think it's got to start with self. So whatever practices people find, whether it's the Reiki or the Kambos, or like you say, it could change over time. Yeah. But all it's got to be is finding something that brings you into the present moment and makes you sit with your emotions, whatever that is.
And starts you on the journey.
Yeah, and like I said to people, and it's just starting, because look, when you looked back at 21, you didn't think then it's going to lead to this with Kambo. I said, when I first started this journey, I just wanted to help myself with anxiety and stop my drinking and get over the grief that I was feeling. If someone would have said 2 years, then you're going to have your own breathing space and you're going to be banging drums, I would have gone, no, that's not. But it starts to happen over, you just look back and all of a sudden you're not that person anymore. Like I read my journal from 2 years ago and cried because I didn't recognise that person. Yeah. And I started to self-doubt like the last couple of weeks, have I come that far? And I read that and was like, you don't even recognise who that person is. Yeah. But so I always say to people, just start. Doesn't matter whether it's a Reiki, a meditation class. It's just getting out that comfort zone, isn't it? And then I find everything starts flowing. The right people come in. The right book gets handed to you. I'll even scroll past something on Instagram and I'm like, that I'm just suddenly drawn to it. And it'll, Sarah come into my life at exactly the right time, even though she'd lived down the road for nearly 40 years. Yeah. It was like
funny, innit?
The right time. And then you start to realise why they did, because I knew I was struggling with a lot of my feminine and bringing that side out, which Sarah's the one who will force that. She made me move my hips. She grabbed me when it weren't working. But the right people will come in and the people will be taken out as well, as we know. But I think you're right. It's what you're setting your vibration at. It's what you're going to attract in. And I look back now and think I kept moaning about getting into relationships where I had to fix the person, but I was looking for that because I didn't want to fix up myself. Yeah. I was distracting. So I had to take accountability. You don't keep drawing these people in. You are that person and you're not you're not helping yourself. So it's easy to push it on other people, isn't it, on the work they need to do. Yeah. When really it's like...
What's that saying about... What is it, taking the... splinter out of you? No, I can't remember it. But yeah, it is like all the other saying, which is, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, who are we to judge anybody? Who are we to tell anybody anything? Because,
life be life.
All we can change is ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's remembering and recognising that the universe, the divine, is always benevolent. Yeah. There's nothing out there that wants to get us or make us feel a certain way. It's always benevolent. And if you go with the flow, then you will be led to these things that bring about the biggest changes.
It's back to the surrendering again, isn't it? And I always hate that the word surrender has like a negative thing to it. Like it's like giving up surrender. And I always say it's the complete opposite. because the moment just before you surrender is normally the most painful in any, and giving that surrender up is actually a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not a weak thing, it's actually the opposite, to just say I'm surrendering to everything.
Relinquishing control.
Yeah, which is a hard thing to do, but yeah. Thanks for coming on, ladies.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I
I
really
really
enjoyed it.
enjoyed that, and that's what I said. This definitely be part one. I think. Get
I
you
think
back
we've got
on.
a lot to say,
yeah,
haven't we?
yeah. There's a lot more to talk about. I'm conscious. I'm like, I could go on, but yeah. Thanks for coming on, ladies.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.